Hi everyone, I'm Liliana with Eventcraft Studio Seasonal Wreaths and Holiday Decor, and today we are going to work on a lemon mesh wreath. Now this wreath is the kit that we got with Greenery Market for our virtual wreath making event. This video is just for you. In case you happen to miss the event, you could catch the replay here, and the great thing about having replays, or rather recorded tutorials, is that you're able to slow them down, go back, rewind, all that great stuff. Unlike our live event, which is going to be approximately 3 hours, maybe even a little bit more than that, this video is a little bit shorter because we're going to cut it just to make it go a little bit faster. But of course, you are going to, like I said, be able to edit it, do whatever, not edit it, I'm sorry. You're going to be able to pause it, rewind it, do whatever you need to do in order to make sure that you have time to create your item. Okay? So the reason I said 2 to 3 hours is because really when you make a deco mesh wreath during the live event and pausing and recording and all that good stuff, you do take about 3 hours. That's from my experience. Okay, so before we get started, let's go over the supplies. These are the materials that you will be receiving with your kit. Okay, or did receive with your kit already, right? Okay, so the first thing that you have always, right? The first thing that we always have with a wreath, what guides it, is the sign. So our sign is a 10-inch aluminum lemon wreath that says welcome. See that? You have the lemon and you have the buffalo. Okay, that's number one. Number two that I have here is a 10-inch by 10 yards buffalo mesh, black and white buffalo. Okay. Next, which is really, let me move some things out of the way, is your wireframe. You received a 24-inch wireframe, 24-inch, 15-inch. You got it. If you're a wreath maker, you understand that it's called 15-inch or 24-inch. 15-inch meaning that it's about 15 inches. 24 inches is when you open these guys up, and usually your finished product is about 24 inches. All right. The next items that we have are the ribbon, and you will be receiving 3 ribbons with this. A 2.5-inch by 10 yards black with lemons. You have a 1.5-inch plaid, which is green, stripes of yellow, and a little bit of glittered white. And then finally, a black and white buffalo, which is also 1.5 inches. Finally, the last 2 awesome things, which are going to be the final pops of detail. You're going to have this awesome greenery. See how beautiful that is? Which is, it's a fern. This is a plastic fern. It's a fern mix, which actually has 9 stems. I'm going into details for you. But if you have it, you're following along with me, you know what you have. And then the last bit are these 2 lemon picks. Or sprays, actually more sprays. See that? Okay. So these are our items. This is what you need to make your wreath. Also, which are not included and you should have, is going to be pipe cleaners for attaching your sign. I personally like to use pipe cleaners, and I like the pipe cleaners to usually match the base or not match the mesh, if that makes any sense, because I also use pipe cleaner to make my hanger in the back, on the back of the wreath, so this pops from the back of the wreath. Or you could use floral wire, so it depends, whatever your preference is. Floral wire is not for the hanger, but floral wire meaning to attach your sign. Okay, now let me put these aside. Let's make some space because we're gonna get working right away. Before we get started, what I'm gonna do is I am going to review the items, the tools that we need to make our wreath. Also, just want to be clear that I'm going to save this one for the live event. I'm going to make my base, my wreath right now, with a white base. Doesn't matter if you could have the white one, you could have the yellow one, but you're going to be receiving the yellow one with your kit. Okay? I only have 2 of them, so I decided to use the white, save my yellow for the live event. So this is what I'm going to be using. Okay, now, before, it's best, I like to have everything out of the way, clean everything out, and start prepping everything. It's time to start prepping everything. Before I get started, I personally like to prep all of my materials. It's kind of like when you're baking, right? You prepare everything, or when you're making a recipe, you prepare all your ingredients first. So then afterwards, as you're working, you just have to add them. You're not going to stop to prep different items. So that's the way I like to work. I like to prepare everything first. But before we prepare, let's work on our tools. Okay, so you need a scissor to cut your ribbon. You need a beadsmith tool. This will be used to punch holes in your sign. You need to punch holes in your sign. I like to make four holes in the sign. Most of you here with us are experienced wreath makers, so you attach it however you prefer. It is aluminum sign. I do not recommend to use cable mounts because they're plastic and they tend to fall off unless you have a longer process with the the really strong glue, and it takes forever. But the point is, you guys know what your preference. I prefer to use this on aluminum signs. That's the beadsmith tool. Also, a rotary cutter. A rotary cutter to cut. Oh no, we're not cutting mesh. There's only one mesh. See, this is my habit. I usually, no, we're not using that. No. Sorry. And a glue gun. We need a glue gun. Of course, we need a glue gun because we're gonna be attaching. We're gonna be needing glue for attaching our florals to the wreath. Now, even if you decide to use a steel pick machine, I personally do not like to use steel pick machines with my mesh wreaths, but it all depends on you. Like I said, most of you are experienced wreath makers here. I have found a way of attaching florals to my wreaths where they do not fall off. I have not had any complaints. I personally have them for myself as well, and I haven't needed to use a steel pick machine. Have I done it? Absolutely. But do you need to? I personally do not believe that you need to. But let's get this guy going. Yes, I do have a mini. If you know me, it's because I do not like to get burned. I have had way too many accidents. I'm sure many of us have had. But I use a mini glue gun just to attach my florals at the end. But let's get it going just so everything is nice and hot at the time that we are finished. Okay? So my glue gun's going. There you go. All right. So because we are not working with a sign that we have to attach anything to it, we don't even need to prepare the sign. So we're going to get right straight to the ribbons. Okay? So let me move this aside and let's get started. Okay, like I said, I started preparing a lot of the items. So here are the ribbons that we're going to be working with. Now for this wreath, I actually cut the ribbons at 12 inches. I personally prefer them at 13, but whenever I end up making a wreath twice for an event or for a tutorial, I actually like doing one at 12 and one at 13 so you can see the difference. And you'll see the difference. You see a dramatic, more of a drastic difference from 12 to 14 than you do from 12 to 13. The difference is a little bit subtle, but this is what we have. These are cuts at 12 inches, just in case you're wondering. But like I said, I prefer 13. These I cut them at 12 though. It's okay. So here are my ribbons, which have already been pre-cut. This guy I'm gonna save to the end. I don't want to use it yet. This one, I like to use the mesh that I always like to have a different mesh for my bows that I'm gonna be using at the end. That's my preference. Of course, if you wanted to add a third ribbon to your wreath when you're working, go for it. Go for it. Make it your own. Everybody's doesn't have to be exactly the same. We're here to have fun. We're here to learn. And that's about it, right? It's just about having an event together. All right. So then finally, let's start cutting our ribbon. So I already, like I said, started preparing these. So let's see how many we have. I believe I need only 3 more, but I decided to leave a few just so you could see the way that I cut it. Not everybody has a board. When I first got started, I actually ended up cutting a piece of cardboard, and I would wrap my ribbons around the cardboard in order to make it a little bit faster. I bought this from Hot Mesh Mom. You see a lot of wreath makers make them. There are a few different suppliers that have them. A lot of the wreath makers actually offer them as well. This one in particular was made by Hot Mesh Mom, and she offers them at a 10-12, and the other one is 13-14. So what you do with this is that you wrap the ribbon, and I'll show you, let's give you a quick example. This one is 12, and what you do is you would wrap this all the way around multiple times, and then you just do a cut, right? Like I said, this is a good way to do it if you're trying to save time, if you're doing this for business. But because we're here to have fun and it's an event and I like to do things together, I cut everything one by one, like the first time I started, as if I did not have all these little shortcuts, right? So let's cut. Let's see how many I have left. So you have 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means I need three more of these, because our wreath base, the work wreath, you just make sure that before you start cutting ribbons, you end up counting how many you need. If you look at the ticket or just the description of the work wreath that you bought, it'll say 24 inches or 15 inches, like I said, depending, but that's actually the same. Or, oh, and it'll have like an X36. X36 means 36 points, meaning 36 of these guys, which actually, well, 36 tips, which divided that by 2 equals 18. So you're going to have 2 tips at each point. So that means you need 18 ribbon cuts, if that makes sense. So let me explain it again. 36, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Get it? Makes sense? In this case, you have 8 on top, 10 at the bottom. So 1, 2, that's 1. 3, 4, that's 2. 5, 6, that's 3. Get it? Get it? So that 36 divided by 2, so that's 18. So I already have 15. So we need 3 more of these. Okay, let me just put it aside. And like I said, this ribbon was cut at 12 inches. So I'm going to keep them the same. If you actually got to make this live with me, you're going to see I'm going to do it at 13. This is 12. One more. So it was 15 plus 3, 18, right? So now we're going to dovetail them. Not all ribbons, I don't dovetail all ribbons. I'm going to be completely honest. But usually when I work with my mesh wreath, I do dovetail them. And also depending on the ribbon. You don't want to dovetail all ribbons. Ribbons that are finer, like satiny, you really don't want to dovetail them. But if you do, then use a sealant like a frig check, in order to make sure that they don't go all over the place. Okay, so I cut it in half, well, folded it in half, and now I'm going to cut it at an angle, and we have our dovetail. Make sure that you're not cutting your angle in the wrong direction, because I've done that, and what you're gonna do is, instead of I'll show you. So you have that, right? But if you cut it in the wrong direction, you're gonna get this. You don't want that. You're not gonna want that. And if you have to fix it, it's fine. Then you could just use a ribbon in one of the inner circles that may be covered by the sign. Okay? And I only did 2 because I don't like to cut more than 2, dovetail more than 2, because I feel like things get crazy and the ribbon moves, and when the ribbon moves, then your angles are off, and then I'm always fixing it. So, but that's just me. That's just me. Okay. There you go. So we have our 18, okay? Now, this is garbage. Now let's count our green plaid. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Haha. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 15, 16. So we only need 2 more of the other one. I'm like going off here. Okay, so we have 16. We need 2 more. Same thing, 12 inches. And remember, you could cut it at 12. You could cut it at 13. You could cut it at pretty much whatever you want to cut it. Sorry, excuse me for a second. Getting out of the shot for a moment. My hands are super dry down here. Okay. All right. So we cut those 2 at 12 inches, like I said, and now we need to dovetail them. All right. Finally, fold them, dovetail them. Now, do you guys seal all your ribbons? I don't seal all of my ribbons, but I do seal quite a bit of them. Just because depending, as I'm cutting them, and if I start seeing a little bit of fraying, I realize that the ribbon tends to do, I mean, not every ribbon is perfect, not everything frays, including your mesh, but you just have to be a little bit cognizant of what you're offering for your clients, your customers. So if you notice that as you're working that this ribbon tends to get a little bit crazy, I'm not saying about this one, I'm just saying in general, I'm just speaking in general, you might want to seal it. And it's easier to seal it before you attach it to the wreath. But everything frays, everything has that little bit of stuff. Haven't gotten any complaints about it because I don't do it for everything. Okay, so here are our 2 ribbons. Yay, so that's done. Oh, we could place these aside. So now what we're going to do is work with our base. We're going to make our base. All right. So our base is going to be, like I said, on this mesh. Let me get the glue gun out of the way. Glue gun doesn't want to sample. Okay, so we're going to use a 24-inch work wreath. And before you get started, just lift these guys up. Prepare your base. Make sure that everything is facing in the direction that you want it to be facing. It'll save you a lot of time. It'll save you headaches while you're working, because seriously, it'll be a bit annoying to be trying to fix these and arrange them as you're working. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be nice. So it's best to just have these things going, facing the direction that you want it to face, and all that good stuff. And you got to remember, these things come from a factory in China, so they're made quickly, and things are in between the wires, and you know, all that craziness. And the spacing isn't always exact. Not always. It's not. It's just not. But hey, it is what it is. We make the best. We do the best that we can. Next thing, make sure you remove our label. You gotta move your tag. You don't want to have a wreath with a tag. Same thing with your folders. Okay. Now, before I keep going, let me make sure that I plug you in, because I completely forgot to do that before I got started. Excuse me for a moment. Okay, that way I don't lose you. Okay, so now let's make our base. See, this is as real as it gets. You know me. You know me, you know me. All right. So where are you going to get started? Me personally, when I am working with a work wreath, I want to make sure that the point where I cross over to make my bridge, meaning cross over from the top to the bottom, are as close as possible. That's where I get started. And usually, and like I said, it's not always even. It's not going to be even. So I try to find the 2 points that are closest possible. And in this case, it's these two. And a lot of times there's a little bar right by those two. See that? By those 2 points. And I love that because that's usually the point where I am going to hang my wreath hanger. Every wreath that I make, rarely has there been a wreath that I've made that does not have a wreath hanger. It just, whether it's mesh, grapevine, whatever it is, it just makes life much easier for your customers when it comes to hang. You don't know where they're going to hang them. I have a fireplace with a huge, it's impossible to hang that. So with my tobacco baskets, I add a hanger to it just so that when I'm trying to hang it up there, it has a place for it to be secured, if that makes sense. Okay, so moving forward. Where's my spot? Right here. So let's get started. Let's get started. So, first thing you're going to do is, hopefully I may not jinx myself by saying I'm going to drop it. This is nice mesh. It's got the yellow stuff out of the way. Not that it matters because it's going to be yellow in the wreath. I'm going to grab about 5 inches. That way I have enough material to tuck into the wreath, and that way I have enough material to work with when I'm cleaning up the wreath at the end. So 5 inches. So I'm at the 8 here. So 8 plus 5 is 13. So actually, this is more. Let's go. Let's actually make it more like 7. Yeah, let's make it more like 7. I just like to have more material to play with inside. Now make sure that your ends are tucked in. That'll just make your life a lot easier as you're working. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Okay, now, not everybody likes to measure. I'm a measurer. I like to measure. I just like to see what I'm working with. However, despite the fact that I'm a measurer, I know very well that there are times that these guys are a little bit too close to each other, so I may have to fudge it a little, if that makes sense. So even though these are going to be 10-inch loops on top, 10-inch loops at the bottom, the first loop also is always a little bit crazy. So, and you'll see what I mean by that. So I'm going to count, I'm at the 6, so I'm going to go to 16. I'm just going to gather this. I'm going to ruffle it up, just gather it. Make sure that your ends are curled in. And the reason I say that, you see me, I'm fixing it as I go. Why am I fixing it as I go? It just makes life easier, because then later on you're not going to come back and have to fix every single poof that you make. Just adjust it as you go. This is really, really nice mesh. See that? Just adjust it as you go. This is gorgeous mesh. Oh my God. Okay, 7. And I said 7 is because I started at the 7. So if you hear me just blurting out numbers, it's because that's where I'm starting. And that's where I am counting from. So I'm adding, so 7, I'm adding 10. So that's why I'm adding at the 17. So if you might hear me saying 17. Okay. And then as I do that, I'm curling it. I'm working. Curl it in. This guy popped up a little bit too much for me. You know what? Let me tuck this guy in a little bit more. It's not the end of the world. It's just me wanting that poof. There we go. And I just give it like 2 little turns, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm showing you the way I work. It's not the end of the world if it's not perfect and if it's popping up, because you're going to have so many things going on here. You can have ribbon, you're going to have lemons, you're going to have greenery on top of that. It's going to cover everything. It's going to cover. And also don't forget the sign. So it's going to cover everything. That's just me being me. Okay. Again, because I undid that one. So this style is honestly my favorite style when it comes to making wreath bases. I just feel like it's so much easier than the others where you have to do a lot of cutting and a lot of prepping. Remember to curl it in. This one was sticking out. Curl it in. Fix it before you move on to the next guy. And then once it's in there, I'm only gonna give it 2 twists and then I'm gonna fix it. See that? Isn't that pretty mesh? So pretty. Okay, I'm at 6. Now, how do you like your puffs? Sometimes some people like them a little bit more in, a little bit more hidden, more ruffled as you go. I like them poofy. I like all things poofy. Here we have some of the fibers, let's call them, from the end. I'm just going to cut those off because they're getting in the way. And we continue. So now I got to the point where I started. What I'm gonna do now, because this is the exact point where I started, I'm gonna open this one again. Same place where I started. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna open it and I'm going to place my mesh. Now just be mindful of where the direction that you're placing it. The reason I say that is because I'm gonna start working down. So I'm gonna make sure that my mesh is facing downward. If I place it, if I push it in, does that make sense? If I put it in the upwards direction, it doesn't make sense. I want to make sure that when I place it in the, I'm going down. Now we close it again. We're not finished with that tie. That tie is going to be opened again for the ribbon and then slightly adjusted for the picks. Okay. So that was 8 poofs on top, and now we're gonna bridge over to the bottom. So the way that we bridge to the bottom is we gotta hold this nice and tight, right? You see that? Nice and tight. We're gonna cross it over to the bottom, and we're gonna close that. See that? We bridged it over. So now we're gonna do the same thing at the bottom at 10 inches. Look at what we have so far. That's so pretty. This mesh works with anything. You can use it for Halloween. You can use it for, we're using it for lemons, with lemons. You can use it for Christmas, Easter, black and white, everything. Everything. Okay, so here we go. We're doing the same thing again. Don't forget to keep tucking in your ends. And a little bit of patience here, because now you have another layer above and that could get a little bit frustrating. I get it. And I guess this shirt's going to be added to my collection of work wreaths, wreath making shirts. I have a whole collection of shirts that has holes in it, so I wear them over and over and over again, because it could be grapevine, it could be mesh, it could be whatever. The mesh, the work wreath, the grapevine, they attach themselves to you. When you pull them off, you get holes. This shirt has survived many years, I must say. Okay, so where am I? Another thing to just be aware of is that your mesh is going to start going at an angle. It's going to start moving at an angle as you're working. That's normal. Don't try to you're going to try to straighten it out. You're not going to be able to help that. It's okay. It's going to happen. See that? I don't know if you can see that. It's at an angle. I just keep going down the line, going up that line as I'm ruffling. And I'll move the wreath for you as I do the next one so you could see what I'm doing. But look how it's filling up. I get so excited when I do this. I really do. I really do love what I do. Okay, so now I'm at 7. Go to 17. Okay. Make sure to curl in the ends, right? Turn them in. We're going to open this guy. Place it in the middle. Sorry, I'm doing my best to do this backwards for you. See that? Place it in the middle. Close it. I like to do 2 turns. See that? And then take a moment to adjust and tuck your mesh. Next, I'm at 16. Again, don't get confused with my numbers because I am just blurting out numbers as I follow the mat. Just in case I edited this part, let me just make sure to say that I'm measuring 10-inch loops. So if I say 16, that means that I started at 6, I'm adding 10, so I'm at 16 when I ruffle up, when I'm gathering. So that's why I brought out 16, 17. Remember to turn your edges in. At first it's going to be a little, if you've never worked with mesh like this, it is going to feel a little bit awkward to be gathering mesh at an angle, but you'll get used to it. And the bigger the mesh, the more awkward it feels. Like if you work with 21, which I love working with 21, but I'll admit it's kind of awkward. Okay, and I'm at the last one now. I'm at the last one. Last one. Open it again. See if I can do this at kind of an angle for you. Open it. Open the last point that we're at. Doing this backwards. Open it. Now this time I want my mesh to be going upwards. Why? Why do I want my mesh to be going up when the last one was down? The reason is because we're going to do 3 levels. There's going to be a level up top, 10 inches, level at the bottom for 10 inches, and then we're going to do a center level. And that level is basically to cover most of the yucky stuff. Why do I say the yucky stuff? If you have a wreath, and this mesh is actually excellent mesh, so it doesn't really need it because it's so full. But generally speaking, you could see between the 2 levels, and you're going to see that, right? But this mesh is really good. I'm still going to do it just because it's habit, and you're going to see the difference, how it fills it up. You're not going to see that gap. So we don't want to see that gap. That's why I said it's like yucky. You don't want to see that gap in between. So that's why now we're going to do a middle level. This middle level, we're going to use the same points that we used for the bottom level. So I'm just going to use the same exact level, the same exact 10 that I used. I'm going to count to 8 this time. I personally have used 9, I've used 10. For me, 8 works best every single time. So I'm going to open it up, count to 8, and do the same thing again. So we're going to be doing that 10 times again because we're using the points at the bottom. Now, there's some people that like to crisscross, people that like to use the top ones. I personally like to use the bottom. I've tried the other ways. This always seems to work for me. So I work with the bottom ones. All right. Okay. Okay. So we are at 8. And now you really have a lot to look at now, because now you have not 1 but 2 levels of mesh that you're looking at. So you have to make sure that you don't skip anything, and you'll be able to tell if you do. But same thing that you did with the top and the bottom. See how I have this here now? You have these little edges. I don't like that, so I'm going to make sure that I tuck that in. Make sure it's nice and curled in. But you see how it looks like an extra little poof, but it's blended in. I personally don't want to see the edges. I mean, it's okay if you do sometimes, but in this case, because it's that extra little poof in there that we're trying to have it blend with the rest of it, or at least in this case, because it doesn't have an edge, like a decorative edge, I'm going to make sure that it blends. It hides. All right. And then I'll do a few more so you can see the difference between the part that actually has it and does not have it. So again, 8 inches. It seems like it's not a lot when you're gathering it on the mat, but it's enough. And again, take the time to fix it now. It saves you so much time. There have been times when I first started that I would just do everything and then come back and have to reorganize everything, and it was like, oh my god, what am I doing? It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to have to come back. Just do it while you're at that particular location. Makes your life way easier. And remember, 8 inches, 10 on top, 10 at the bottom, middle level at 8. Tuck it in, fix your edges. Maybe you like the edges showing, that's all up to you. All right, so I already did a few, but do you see how this looks here? These all have centers. And then if we keep going and I show you this side, this does not have it. This does have it. Do you see the difference? See how much more finished and more professional it looks? That's the difference. That's what you're getting. That's the difference in quality and finishing that you have when you add that extra level. Just take the time. It's not going to take you much longer. If you have a 10-yard mesh roll, just do it. You're still going to have a teeny bit left at the end, usually. Usually you do have a little bit left at the end. But just use your roll. Use your entire roll. Fill it up. It makes a big difference. And like I said, sometimes you may need to eyeball it. You may need to eyeball a little bit. In this case, the points were a little bit separated, a little bit more than the others. So I just had to fudge it a little. It's okay. use your own discretion. Follow your gut. It's usually right. And again, if you're wondering, what am I doing here on this side? I keep moving things around. It's because I'm tucking the ends in, making sure that it looks nice and awesome. But remember that we are still going to be opening those points again at least one more time, because we need to add our ribbons to it. At least one more time. At least. Like, what is she talking about? You'll see. We're at the end. Didn't completely roll off the table. Has anyone ever done that? Have the whole roll off the table? That's fun. Not fun. But hey, it happens. It happens. It's part of the job. Stuff that happens while you're working. We're almost at the end already. We're almost at the end. You're going to have some points like this one that is just not looking so pretty to me, but it's okay. That's why you see me moving things around. But that's why, like, here you go. This is in the beginning. The beginning points, like when you start with the mesh, always have like the biggest gaps, the biggest loops, like usually. But you see that? That's why. Because you always have these occasional points that just yucky. Yucky. My daughter says yucky. So I'm going to fill it. And this is where we started. This is exactly where we started. This one, I am going to, you know what, down. No, I'm going to do it up. Why am I going to do it up? Because I want the tail to be tucked inside. It's the last loop. It's where we started. So that first loop where we started, and those points, they have a lot going on. They have a lot going on because they have not one, but two sections. It has mesh going through it twice that it's gathering. See that? And then it's going to have ribbon on top of it as well. So this time I'm going to cut it pretty long and then I'm going to tuck it inside through the top. Now, where's my scissor? At this point, it doesn't even matter. I'm just going to be a little bit generous with it. Still have a little bit of mesh left over. Not a lot. Don't throw it out because you never know when you need this to be used as an accent for something. A grapevine wreath. Another, if you have all these little bits, you could actually just use them for another wreath. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to tuck it inside and hide it. Pulling it inside. So this later on when you're finishing, I personally like to attach these inside with pipe cleaner. I'm sorry, with zip ties. I like to attach these with zip ties when I'm cleaning up the wreath. I don't like you to see all this stuff with my wreaths. That's just me. Okay. But that is the top. This is the top of my wreath. I don't gather them until everything is finished, so that way I know my orientation. Some people like to place their wreath hangers at the beginning. I usually add it at the end, depending if in case I change my mind with the orientation with some of the items that I add. Okay, so our base is made. Here it is. Look how pretty that is. Isn't that amazing? So gorgeous. So now let's add our ribbons. All right. So like I said, we're ready to pre-cut our ribbons. That's why it's best to have everything ready to go, because imagine you just made the base and I was like, okay, now let's cut ribbons. Let's just have our ribbons, everything done, ready to go. And now it's time to just start adding the ribbons. Now, the way to add the ribbons, you're going to take your 1.5. We're going to put the, 2.5. Place the 1.5 on top of it. You're going to fold it in half. Try to find the midpoint and pinch it. Pinch it, pinch it. Now, we're going to come to a point in our wreath. Place it in the middle. Hope you can see that. See that? Can you see that? And we're going to tie it again. This time, I would make it a little bit tighter. Make sure that's to the bottom, make it a little bit tighter. And the way I like to do it is I like to, it all depends on the way that you like to face your ribbons. The top ribbons, I always like to have my 2.5. Make sure you make your wreath at 13 inches, guys. I like to show you the differences, but you see that? It's hiding a little bit. It really should be at 13. But that way, that's why I like to do these, so that way you can see the difference. See that? You could still see it. You could still see it, but just to my preference, 13 would look a little bit better. See that? Okay. So I like to have my top 2.5 inch horizontal. So let's just keep adding that. I'm very, very transparent. I'm not going to tell you, oh no, 12 looks good. No, it does. It looks fine. It's fine. I actually like 12 because the ribbons tend to stand up a bit more. But in this case, because of the mesh, well, actually, let's just keep going and we'll see. But because of the mesh, I think I would have preferred 13, cutting it at 13. It's fine. Still going to be a pretty wreath. You'll see, because you can still see it. You can still see it. See that? You can still see it. I like how they stand more at 12. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So it really depends on your mesh. Okay, like I said, you could do top and bottom as you go along. I personally prefer to do the top first and then I come back and do the bottom. See, and it's not terrible because it still pops. You still see it. So another reason that I also like to use the 12 inches is because the different ribbons tend to not touch each other. You see that? So sometimes I prefer that. Again, it depends on the look, depends how I'm feeling. But this way you get to see how the two different looks. But you see that? They each have their own space. That's actually pretty important to me, which is the reason why I tend to do 12 quite a bit. I actually never do 14. Never. It's pretty interesting. Maybe for more romantic looks. I don't know. Maybe when we make this one live, I'll make 14. I don't know. Okay, so we're still doing the same thing. Sure. Your ribbon placement is so important. So important. that could make you love or hate your wreath. Like, seriously. See that? You could feel like your wreath looks messed up, and really it's because your ribbons are squished. That's all it is. It's like, just take some time to have your ribbons pop. See that? How it's changing. And my voice changes when I'm excited. Okay, still doing the same thing. This guy, I think we made the same thing. And we have our first layer finished. That's our top level. See that? Now let's do the same thing at the bottom. The only difference that I make at the bottom is that I personally like to use the ribbon to fill these little bumps. See how we have these little bumps here? So I like my ribbon, the 2.5, to be facing, to be used like this, like vertically. So that way it kind of fills in that little bump. Even though we're going to be using flowers and lemons and all that stuff, I still, that's just a habit of mine already, to face them in that direction. That's the orientation that I like always use for my bottom level. So I'll turn it now so you could see. See that? And again, it's 12. See how it pops? It's standing up. It still works. It still works. They're still going to be over touching each other, all that great stuff. Because I know sometimes it's like, oh my God, they're too short. And then you can't really go back and cut them. I mean, you can, but really, you're going to do that. I'll do a few more and then turn it for you so you could see. And I'll have a few that I make in that direction. Let's do a couple more. Let me just show you. Stands up. That's where I like 12. That. Okay. Well, let's do another one with you. Okay, so we're gonna take this guy. We're going to open it, right? We're gonna place it in the middle, in the center. I personally try to push it down a little bit and then I close it as tightly as I could. Then I move. I like to have my 2.5 vertically and my 1.5 horizontal, but that's just for the lower level. And the reason, my logic behind it, my over analytical self, is because it fills in this little gap that we have here. It covers it. That's why I do it. Okay, so let's keep filling this guy up. Wreath is so pretty. Thank you so much, Greenery Market. This is gorgeous. Alana and her color combination skills. She's awesome. Thank you for putting this together for us. Just a few more and our base is completely done. It is finished. And I always say that the base is finished, but if you think about it, like the whole wreath base is like the whole thing. It's just the base that you keep adding more and more and more to it. Three more. Last one. And take time to pulling your ribbons. Another thing to be very, very, very aware of is that once you add your sign and you add your stuff, all the extra stuff that you're going to add to it, you're going to have to come back and readjust your ribbons again because you're going to squish them. So there have been times where I've added the sign before the ribbons, and that actually helps keep them up a little bit better. But for the most part, I usually add the ribbons then add the sign, and you're going to squish your ribbons. It's going to happen. And regardless, depending on the orientation that you decide to use for your wreath, like you decide to, for your sign, that depends the way that your ribbons are going to face too. It's going to affect it. So you always have to come back to fix your ribbons. So remember, you're always going to fix your ribbons. Even if you have this wreath saved somewhere in storage and then someone buys it, before you ship it, you have to fix your ribbons again. So you're always going to be adjusting your ribbons. You go to a craft fair, you squished it in your car, you put it out, you're going to have to spend some time while you're waiting around for the people to come or whatever it may be. You're going to be pulling and working with your ribbons. So remember, you have to tug little, don't go crazy either, because you don't want to, pull them out. Depending, if you have glue in them, you'll be fine. But you get what I'm saying. Pulling on your ribbons and all that stuff makes such a big difference. But look at that. Look at what we made. Look at what we've worked on so far. And you see how they do stand up, and you do see them. And again, these are 12 inches. Had this been 13 or 14, they would have been more drapey, a little bit more droopy. But this is what you get when you do 12. Okay? All right, so I've got to find again where my top is. My top is right here, because now we're going to add this sign. So this is the top. I'm going to keep it right there, because right now we're going to work. Let's get our sign ready. So here is the sign. There we go. Sorry, I wanted to face it right, even though it doesn't really matter for me. It's like, no, I got to look at it. And here is my beadsmith tool. So I have all the mesh thingies. So let me not do math. I don't feel like doing math right now. I'm going to start at, it is a 10-inch sign. So I'm going to make that first little dot at 5. Let me make sure it is straight. There we go. The dot's going to be right in the middle of that little grate. Means that my other one is going to be right on top. Same thing at the opposite. Right there. Made that one a little bit higher, but it's okay. And then, like I said before, I like to add 4. I'm sorry. Yeah, 4. I like to add 4. So we're going to do it same thing, 5. You know, it'll be even easier if I just turned it. There's my 5. There's my 5. There's my 5. I'm trying to make it exact. That's what it is. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's just me. So it ended up being on both sides. It ended up being in the gray dots. And the gray dot here as well. So remember, beadsmith tool. You find this in the jewelry section of the craft store. We do not need that anymore. So, like I said before, I personally like to add my signs using pipe cleaners. It's all a matter of preference. I have 3 and my 4th disappeared. Oh, that's awesome. My 4th one disappeared. Alright, so let's start with the first 3. Where did my 4th one go? That's so interesting. So I'm just going to put it through here. Actually, let's do it again. Let's cut. I like to fold it in half, even though sometimes I'm going to end up moving it around depending on how the placement is in the sign. The sign is going to be placed on the wreath. And I'm going to have to step away for a moment to find my 4th pipe cleaner, or just grab another one, because it disappeared. Oh, here it is. Found it. it disappeared when the ribbons disappeared. When I put the ribbons aside. Okay, so here's the fourth one. Now, there it is, because I folded it. It's a little bit easier. Now, right now, I am working with a white base. So can you just imagine the yellow one, how it's gonna pop? So a lot of times, well, not that a lot of times, depending on the wreath base that you use, meaning the work wreath, your design changes, the colors change. So if it's something that you're gonna hide it, then it doesn't really matter. But in this case, just imagine how much the yellow is going to complement this wreath. Because all in these spots here, where you see white, these are gonna be little bursts of yellow, which could be used to enhance the design. You could also remember that we are gonna be using florals. So you may not see them as much, but you could make them work to your advantage. Even though when you cut them a little bit, you're gonna see these little pops. Okay, so here's our sign. I'm gonna use our sign in the middle. And I personally like to place it a little bit in. I like to hide it a little. But always before I end up adding anything, meaning hiding my sign or adding my sign, I like to make sure where my top is. Where is the top of my wreath? Where's my hanger gonna go? And my hanger, again, remember, this is where we started, right? Right here. This is my top. So with that being said, this is the point where the top of my wreath is, meaning the ribbons. It worked out that way. That was perfect. So that's where I want the top of my wreath to be facing. I do not want my wreath to be to the side. I want this wreath to be perfectly straight. Okay. So then I'm going to actually go through the mesh. Well, in this case, maybe I won't have to. I may not have to go through the mesh. Sometimes you do want to go through the mesh. But I'm going to attach my sign to the wreath. And at first this is going to be like this craziness. Like you don't know what's going on. It's going like hanging off the side. It's going... But just try to place it as well as you can. And then we're going to move it around and place it. It's not always perfect in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. At least for me. You have those times where you're working on it and it just perfectly goes where you want it to go the first time. And there's other times where I move it around like 4 or 5 times and I'm like, what is going on? And it's like another 20 minutes of just sign placement. But that's important. You have to take the time. Because if you're not happy with the sign placement, that just changed your whole design. Remember, you're going to add florals and lemons or whatever other things you're going to add to it. So you want your sign to be where you want it to be before you start adding all those other things. Because then what are you going to do? Take the sign out and move it after you have that? Like, it's not going to be that easy. So this is where it is so far. See that? Nice in the middle. Now we could move it up a little bit more. Should we? Where am I? Here I am. You can move it up a little bit more. Why? Because I want to add a bow. I always like to add a bow right here in the lower right side. That's me. That's me. Right here and right here. I like to add bows. That's why this wreath is fun, because we're adding bows. So remember, it's okay to go through your mesh. When I first started making wreaths, I was terrified of going through my mesh. But sometimes you have to go through your mesh. It actually secures your wreath more. It changes the placement a little bit. So if you have to, it's okay. And these are also things that you could do afterwards when you're cleaning up, like the back of it, making sure that it's secured. I don't like my, I do not like my signs to move. I don't. That's just my thing. I do not like my signs to move. Some people don't mind their signs moving. Doesn't matter. It also depends on the design. But I do not like my signs to move. I just don't. Call it my control thing. I do not like my signs to move. I was moving them around. My bottom one, I was flip-flopping it with my side one. This one, I was grabbing it in the other location, so then it kind of threw things off a bit. But we're fixing it now. So you go to the back. And stop throwing me off. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. Okay. It is fun though, right? Okay, so like I said, I like my sign to be in. So at this point, now we have it like that. You see that? So now what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's say, hide my sign. But I'm going to start pulling these ribbons again. So you're going to be, let's call it playing with your ribbons a lot. You're going to have to start pulling them, even the mesh, depending on what you want to do with your sign. I like my mesh to kind of hide the edges of my sign. At least not always, but this is one of the occasions where I do want that to happen. Sometimes I like my sign to be placed on top. It all depends on your preference. But see, like here, I don't like to see the edges of the mesh usually, but see, like in this case, the ribbon is under it. So we're gonna pull it back out. In the past, I would leave it under. No, not so much. But you see how like we just flattened this by working with it? So now we gotta come back and we gotta pull these ribbons again. Pull them, fix them. Do whatever you gotta do. It makes a huge difference. You have to. You have to. It's not a choice, okay? It's not a choice. You have to. It completely changes your wreath. It really does. See, I'm missing one here. And by doing this, you're going to realize what ribbons are missing. Like they disappeared. Where are they? Oh, they're hiding underneath the wreath. Or turn it around and you'll see them hanging out back here and you just tuck them under. If you want to, that is. Okay. So you see, that's what we have. All right. So now it is time to work on our florals. It is time to work on our florals. Actually, no. It's not time to work on our florals. It's time to make a bow. Let's make a bow. All right. So my friend here is going to take a walk. Doesn't want to leave me. Bye for now. And we're going to finish off, we're going to complete our wreath now, standing up on the easel. My easel. My wreath wreath stand. Okay. And I'm telling you, the more you look at it, the more you play with it, you're gonna see what it needs. See, like in this case, depending on the different ribbon sizes, if you had a 13, they would curl more. So again, it all depends on what you like. But I like to tell you like what the different options are with different ones, for the different cuts that you do. Okay. The last tool that I forgot to mention that you needed at the beginning of the video is a wire cutter. You need a floor wire cutter. You need this guy. But I'll make sure to add it to the list of items that you need. Okay, but see how I'm coming back and I'm curling these things and I'm tucking them and moving them up a little bit and all that stuff. That makes a big difference, guys. It makes a big difference. Changing the orientation of your, changing the orientation of your ribbons, making sure that they are seen. You got to remember that you're investing a lot of money in your items, in your product. So you have to make sure that they are being seen. You want them to be seen. Okay. So we have, I still want to push this guy in. I'm not going to lie. I want to push my sign a little bit more. That's just me. We all have our style. That's just me. That's cute. Okay. So now let's make our bows. So let's make our bow. And for the bow, we're going to add this buffalo. Why are we going to add that? The reason that I liked for my bow to have a third ribbon is simply because I don't want the bow to disappear amongst the rest of the wreath, which has these two ribbons. And then we add a bow with this ribbon, and then it blends, if that makes sense. This one makes it stand out a little bit more. So it's gonna be a very simple bow. Where is my wire? Well, let's just use the one that's right here. We have our wire. I personally do not care about the gauge that my wire has. The reason I say this is because everybody has their own way of making bows, right? Some people like to tie their bows with zip ties. Some like to use floral wire. And then I like to use a floral wire to make the bow. And then I attach the bow with a pipe cleaner. Does that make sense? So you shall see. And I just realized that I should have gotten one more pipe cleaner. Bear with me for 1 second because I did not grab it. Let's grab 2 more pipe cleaners. Okay. Okay, so I have 3 more pipe cleaners. Usually I have 7 to 8 pipe cleaners. All right, so this is the ribbon that we have left. So let's make our bow. So the first thing to do is let's work with our tail. You have to decide on how long you want your tail to be, and it all depends on the placement of the bow. This bow is going to be placed right around here. So I'm going to, the tail, I want it to be about that long. Maybe a little bit longer will be fine. So that is about 13. So let's go for 15. It's easier to cut it if it's too long than it is to add more ribbon, right? So let's make it about 15 and a half, 15. And we're going to grab that just like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it. And what I love about this ribbon is that it has like a good side, bad side. Some ribbons, you can't tell when it's a good side, bad side. Usually that's like with your solid color linens, you can't tell. But you still want to twist even those because that is going to give it a little bit more of a pop, meaning it's going to stand up a little bit more. So actually, this is how I actually hold it. So there we go. So now I'm going to measure 12, right? And this is going to give us 6-inch loops, right? So there you go. I'm going to twist it. Made another 6-inch loop, measured 12 again, and now we have 2 bunny ears. One thing that I love to do always when I'm working is to constantly be checking, pulling on my loops to make sure that they are even, right? So now I'm gonna make one more. This is simple bow, guys, very, very simple. Measure to 12 again. Got it right there. Again, bunny loops, see, bunny ears. And now I'm just gonna measure to approximately where this one is, and I'm gonna cut it. There you go. Easy. 3 loops. That's it. Now I'm gonna add, which one should we add next? No, we're gonna add this guy next because that's the order, and then we want the buffalo to pop. Now, because we started with this one at the bottom here, see that? Now, so let's say below my thumb. Now we want the other ribbon to go above my thumb. See that? So I'm gonna measure it just like that, just by looking at it. It's like, oh, okay, that's approximately about the same, right? So, but I'm just gonna grab it and throw it above my thumb. See that? So now I'm turning it, twisting it, measuring 12 inches again. Right, twisting it again. What I like to call a poofy bow. It's just a nice little pom-pom. See that? All my loops are going to be the same. See here? See? They're the same. And then one more. For 12. And I'm going to cut that one too. They're about the same. See? So I'm constantly checking the sizes of things I'm making. Now the last one, you can make the last one a little bit smaller. Actually, no, I'll make them the same. It's going to be 12 as well. But you could start fixing your bow, but you don't. Usually, it's best when you're finished with it. Because your hands, you don't want to get all cramped up and all that good stuff. Okay, now the last one, we're going to go back to where we started. You could go to the top right if you want. So at the bottom, but I'm going to go, because I want all my tails to be in the same direction, I'm going to start in the same direction that I made the first one. So we're going back to the right. And I'm going to twist this. 12 again. Twist it again. 12 again. One more time, twist it. So like I said, this is easy to be able to track it, meaning the sides, because you have like the good side and the bad side. You're able to tell. And then constantly be checking. If you don't check, there's going to be a chance that your bow could turn out to be lopsided. This is your opportunity to check. And then move your hands a little bit, move your fingers, pull on your ribbons a little bit. A lot of times I've heard people say like, oh, my bow's lopsided. Well, usually it's because you tied it a little bit too much to the right, a little bit too much to the left. This is your chance to check to make sure that it's even before you tie it. Because if you tie it and then check it, then you may have to take it apart and it could fall apart, and it's just going to be just much. I'm not saying you can't fix it. You could also, there's other little hacks that you could do too, by adding like little glue dots and stuff like that. But it just makes life easier to just get it right when before you commit to it. And you commit to it once you add that wire to it, you're committing. Okay. So before I add the wire, I skipped a very important part, which is, let's cut that. So here we have our bow. Looks like a big mess here, but we do have our, that is our bow. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this wire, and again, this is the way that I like to make bows, and I'm going to wrap it around And before I even commit to this, I am making sure that it is in the center. And then I tie in it. So I like to wrap it about 3 or 4 times. No, 4 or 5. I always say 3 or 4 and then I correct myself. That's like 4 times. And then I tighten it. And then once I tighten it, then you could use a, where's my friend? I can't find my friend. Carefully use this guy. Carefully, because you don't want to cut it. And just make sure that it's nice and curled up. Nice and tight. Not too tight because it could break. Then I cut it about a 1/2 inch, 1 centimeter. And then I tuck it in towards the back. Be careful because you could pinch yourself. Okay? I like to know that I could just throw my bow around and it's not going to fall apart. I always feel like if I attach it with a pipe cleaner, it's going to fall apart. So this is the way that I make it, simply because of my paranoid self. So then once it's made like that and I'm happy with it, then I attach the pipe cleaner and then I attach it to the wreath. Get it? Make sense? Okay, good. Okay, so now I'm going to take the pipe cleaner, fold it in half, add it to the wreath. I'm sorry, to the bow. Give it like a little half twist. And now we could even play with the loops. Here's our bow in our hand. Let's make it look pretty. But really, it's going to look prettiest when it's on your wreath. That's when it's really going to look super pretty. Because that's when you're going to be able to play with it, see the direction of everything. You could play with your tails, move them in different directions. But you see, there is our bow. Sometimes you could even change the placement of your pipe cleaner just to control the direction of your tails and all that good stuff, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is what we have. Simple, cute little poofy bow. Now again, this bow was made with all same length. And then afterwards, we don't need to have all these tails. We could just keep a few of the tails and we could use, let's say, the lemon ones to be used as faux loops. It all depends. Depends on what we decide to do with it. But okay, so we have that. So now let's attach it to our wreath. So the way, let's get these out of the way for now. Is I want to add it. I usually add it to a point where we have we have already a point where there is a ribbon point, let's say. So even though there's a ribbon point there, that could actually be used to be like additional little ribbon tails, if that makes sense. It's gonna fall. And I'm attaching it to that point. Now I may want to add another small loop, small bow to it. It all depends. It all depends on how I feel. But I usually like to add, you know how we have our thing that we do? I usually like to add an additional bow up here. But let's see how it goes with everything that we add in terms of the greenery. But this is what we have so far. See? And we could cut this depending how we feel. We could cut it. We could keep it long. But that's what we have so far. Okay? All right. Did I not add? I was afraid for a second. I'm like, did I not add my sign to the top? Yeah, I did. I did. How many times has that happened to you where you thought you added your sign where you wanted and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that wasn't what it was supposed to be. Okay, so we had our bow. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Depending on what you want to do, your preference. Maker's choice, right? You could add your bow to the bottom. It all depends on you. I like to add my bows to the side. That's my preference. I also like to add one up here, but again, that is me. Okay, so the next things that we're gonna add are going to be our lemons. Our lemons are, these are sprays, I wanna say, correct me if I'm wrong, because they are hand tied. Fun hand tying. Make sure, well, in this case, you're not gonna forget to take off your tags. You may have a lot of this left over, just in case. Okay. So you could easily just pull it to separate it. But it all depends on what you want to do, right? I may just want to maybe you want to add the whole thing. I don't. You may want to add a whole spray at the top, on the side. I like to separate it because I like to get the most use out of all the lemons that we have. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use these guys and I'm going to tie it with itself. I'm pulling it. See, that's another one. And we have this little guy by himself up here. So I'm gonna cut this. And you could use floral tape to finish it off. That makes you feel better. But in the end, this is what we have. This is what we have from our first spray. We have this right here. And yes, this is hand tied with paper. So we have this guy, we have this, we have 3 lemons and like extra little thing of leaves here. Which this is actually good to use to add like with a pick. This guy as well. So yeah, these would be great to add with a pick, would be easier. But again, like I'm saying, I am making everything like if you're just doing everything without the tools. If you know what a steel pick machine is, it's this machine right here. So what you would do is, just to give you an example, is let's say this was the bottom of this thing right here. What I would do is I would add one of these and you have that, and that helps you add it to your wreath. But again, I am making this as if we do not have a steel pick machine. We do not have most of the things, but we do have floral tape, right? So let's add our tape. Where is our tape? On the side. Wow, I just put everything on the side too. So let's use our floral tape. Let's keep it nice and easy. And the reason I'm using floral tape is just to make sure that this doesn't fly everywhere and it helps it doesn't go everywhere, and it just makes our life easier. So floral tape sticks to itself. So usually the first little loop is a little bit crazy. I just wrap it and then I start pulling. And this is nice and quick. You don't have to go crazy. And then it just tears off, and when you pull it, it sticks to itself. See that? And I'm gonna do the same thing with this guy right here. Just because, again, we want these things to be finished and professional and all that good stuff. And you notice how I'm not going crazy trying to hide the rest of that. Did something just fly off? I don't even know. Oh, my leaf flew off. It's okay, we'll attach it. See that? My leaf flew off. What do I do? Oh my god. So see that little point there? You could just reattach it. You could just press it on there and then put a little glue dot on top of it just to make sure it doesn't fall off again. So I'm taking my glue gun. This is why I like my mini. I did it to another one. Oh my god. I pulled it again. Glue dot on top. I honestly usually just put the glue dot inside. Do it inside. And be careful with your glue gun and your fruit, because you don't want to melt it. Remember, it's foam. So we have these two. We have this guy. Does this guy need it too? Let's just add it. Remember, we have another one. We have another spray. Okay, this guy I'm not going to do anything with, and this guy I'm not doing anything with either. I'm just going to leave it as is. So now we have to do the same thing with the other one. Why? Let's get out of the way, because we have different size lemons, and we want to make sure that we add the correct lemons to the same place. So if we have a big lemon on top, we want the other one on the opposite side. We don't want the two big lemons next to each other. So while we're at it, let's just do the same thing to the other pick. Okay, so we did the second pick, and it is, like I said, the same exact pick, but when we separate it, things could be a little bit different. They could fall in different directions just because it is a spray and everything is basically hand tied. So when we pull it, things could fall apart in different areas. So I tried to make them as similar as possible, and I think I got it. I think I nailed it. So these are two that are pretty much the same, right? And what I like to do is separate them into things that are the same. So these two are the same. Are they? Yeah. And then these two are the same. And then finally we have these two little sprays here. These two little picks that we made. Remember, I ended up adding the floral tape to the bottom, and then we have these guys here. Okay, so we also, don't forget, we also have this beautiful, 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 this greenery is amazing. We also have this greenery. We have to add this as well. But first, let's add the lemons, because the lemons really are the focal point. And, well, you get what I'm saying. They're more important than the greenery, let's say. It all works together, but they're going to draw more attention than the greenery. So let's work with the lemons. Think of them as your flowers. So you're going to add the flowers first. Let's add the lemons first, and then we're going to fill in with the greenery. Now, if I place one on top, I'm going to add it in the opposite direction, the other one that's similar. So if I'm placing this guy, then the other one's going to be, if this one's on the upper right, this is going to be the lower left. Does that make sense? And then fill in the other ones the same way. So let's just start. And like I said, I'm just placing these. I am not going to fill these. I'm not going to attach these with a still pick machine. I'm just going to place them for now, and you're going to see pretty much what I mean by that. So this guy, I'm going to place him, and you'll see that I play a lot with them. I'm going to be moving them around. Got rid of my sign so that way you could see a little bit better, not have that distraction. But when I add these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a little hole, a little loop, like a little eyelet, and I'm going to add that. I'm going to push it through there. Now, I'm not securing it yet. I'm not committing to it. This is just placement to make sure that I'm happy. Okay? And then once I'm happy, then I'll add the then I'll come back and I'll add the glue. Okay? So I like to start with the larger ones first. Play with the placement. And remember, I'm doing all this without a steel pick machine. It is possible. I've had plenty of wreaths that I have made without a steel pick machine. And when I say to make that loop, what I'm doing is I'm pushing it through. I don't want to see the pick, so I'm actually adding it to the back or from behind, and then I'm wrapping it with the wire or with the needles. And we're gonna hide that. We don't want to see that. So a great example is, just to give you an example, is you're gonna take this. Sorry, I got this off the floor. You take this, and you're making a little loop, like a little circle. See that? And you are going to pass this through that circle. See that? Does that make sense? Pass it through. And this guy, remember, this is plastic, so this melts. So what I like to do is, once I have in place where I'm happy with it, I tighten it as much as I can, and then I'm going to add the glue to it there. And I have tons of glue, and it's Gorilla Glue. I'm very specific about that. Add glue all over the bottom, the top, all over, and it's not going to go anywhere. It does not go anywhere. Don't pull it immediately to see if it stayed. Come back the next day, or in a few hours, and give it a little tug, and you'll see it's not going to go anywhere. Don't go crazy pulling it, you know, like super challenging it, but you'll see it's not going to go anywhere. So that's what I do. I'm going to place it first, and then once I'm happy with the locations, I'm going to bring the wreath back here flat, and I'm going to add glue to everything as I move it around. Okay, so these are our first 2 lemons. As you see, I placed them diagonally. Remember, use your greenery. I'm going to work with the next two in size. We could add one on top. We want them to be opposite of each other. Since I have one in here, this one is technically opposite the lemon. Do you see how much I think this over? I really do. I really, really do. But I want there to be a lemon. Let's say, can we have one up top here? Okay, so I'm going to put one guy in here on the outside. You could add them both all to the top, to the inner ring if you really want to do that. You can do that. Now, if you're watching this as a replay and you want to do this with a steel pick machine, then go for it. You know how to do it. You know how to add the glue to the steel pick machine and add it. You are professionals. Use what you got, guys. Okay, so this one I'm going to do the next one opposite from it. Unfortunately, directly opposite of this guy is kind of hidden behind the bow, so I'm going to use creative license, right? And let's move it a little bit up. Still in the outer ring, but a little bit up. And what we're trying to avoid is having 2 lemons right next to each other. You don't want lemon. You don't want that. And try to have the greenery behind the lemon. And of course, play with it. Move the greenery around. We want to have it full, right? Okay, so then finally, we have these 2 small guys, which I'm going to add one up top right here, because I don't want to add it over here, because then you have it too close to the big one. I don't want to add it to the next guy. I don't want it. Does it make sense what I'm doing? I'm skipping. I'm trying to make sure that the eye travels around the wreath, and it doesn't, like, if I was just looking at the lemons, like your eye hops around, and it's just not like, okay, lemon. It's going lemon around the entire wreath. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So I'm adding the next guy right here. You got to remember, we have a lot of greenery. We have a lot of greenery. We even have these. I don't know if we're going to add these, but we could. So we did that one right there. Technically, opposite of it is down here. And you know what? It's not really so much. It's not a distraction. And by what I mean by distraction is that sometimes when you have them directly in a line, it doesn't look so good. You want it to be a little bit off. So it's okay to have it. And remember, I'm just placing them. Just placing them. Once I'm happy with the locations, then I'll come back. I'll secure them. I'll make them nice and tight, like I said, and I'll come back and hit them with the glue gun. All right. So this is what we have so far. Looking pretty good. See that? Simple and yet so pretty. Okay, so now let's work with our filler. Remember, we still have these two guys, but I'm not going to use them yet. I might use these maybe in the bow as additional accents, but I'm not going to use them yet. One thing to remember is that the wreath has 18 points. We already used one of those points for the bow, and we have 6 more for the lemon. So that's 7, right? 7. So 7 plus, no, that is 7. Duh. So we have 11 more available. So here we have 9. And also one is actually kind of covered down here. So we have 9, maybe 8. I'm sorry, 11 that we need, but really 10 that you really see. But basically what I'm trying to say is that given the materials that we actually have enough material, or I'm sorry, enough product to cover everything. And sometimes you just have to make the executive decision of where you don't want to have one placed. And it's okay. If you don't have enough for everything, it's fine. Or use something extra that you have that coordinates, and you're not going to, or, you know, maybe you use the same bush for something else and you had a little extra one. That's fine. Just use it. But it's not the end of the world if every single one doesn't have something. So before we get started, let's cut this guy up. So like I said, this one has 9. And I'm going to cut it as low as I can go. And this bush is gorgeous. What I love about this bush is that it's mixed. So I don't have to use 2 or 3 different bushes to get the effect. This one bush does so much by itself. And if you know me, when I like a bush, I stick to it. I do like to try different ones, but for the most part, if I find something that I like, that's going to be my go-to. What I like about this bush too, it's that it goes up and down. It moves up and down. And that's, I love that. I know some people don't like that, but I absolutely love it. So this is a plastic fern leaves mix. And it's just absolutely excellent. Now, very, very, very important. When you have these guys, when you see a wreath that is being made online or a tutorial or whatever, and you might say like, hey, I use it doesn't look the same. We have to do something that nobody likes to do, including myself, but you have to do. And it's taking time to open these up. So I just cut this off. Obviously I had already spread it out a little bit, but if you get it in, if you just get it out of the plastic, you push it, it's going to be nice and squished like that, right? So we have to take the time to separate these, move them, give them movement. Oh, I pulled that one off. Whoopsie. Just reattach it. But gently, gently move them. But you see the difference. Maybe you don't want it to be as full, so then put it back. But do you understand what I'm saying? Just giving that little bit of opening, taking a few seconds. How long did that take? Didn't even take that long. But this one's the same as this one. Look at the difference. It's just taking a few minutes to just open them up. And then once they're in the wreath, if it's a little bit too much, then just push back in. But you have to take the time to do that. And I'm not even doing it, I'm not going crazy. Sometimes you might want to really play with the leaves and give it a little bit more movement. I'm not even going crazy. I am the type that I personally like to open things up a little bit more once the wreath is complete. Like once it's attached to the wreath, that's when I really finalize it. Like I know that I'm already going to be going back into it just to pull the bows and the ribbons. I have to reshape them and all that good stuff. So then I take time to play with my wreath, with my greenery and my flowers. And sometimes I honestly have taken what some may consider to be way too long just to figure out the placement of my flowers. Because if a bush comes with different color flowers, I have to make sure that they are spread out correctly. Not that there's a right and wrong way, but you know what I mean. So I'm going to spend more time. And sometimes we all know that sometimes it's easier to come back the next day. If you've been staring at this all day, it's finished, walk away from it. Maybe you want to walk away from it. You're happy with it, walk away from it before you glue everything. And when you come back to it and you look at it, you're going to see things that you didn't see before. Or sometimes, or even better, take a photo of it and you'll see things that you didn't see before. And then the next day, we come back and just secure things or move things around that you needed to move around. Makes your life so much easier. Okay, so we have 9 of these. I didn't go crazy, but I like to push it. I'm going to push it all the way up as much as I could. This is so excellent. Love it. And they're all pretty much the same. If there's one that's a little bit bigger, I'm going to put the bigger one that's towards the bottom to give it a little bit more length. Actually, no, because I have the lemon there. Haha, never mind. But usually that's what I like to do. You know what? And now I'm moving the lemons around. Now I'm moving the lemons around. Am I really doing that? I might be moving the lemons around, guys. Let me think this through. I don't like the lemons to be straight on. You know what? Let's just do it. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. And if you decide to place yours differently, then go for it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. No. Nope, not happening. All right, let's start at the top. Usually, when I start adding my picks, I add them to the bottom. Just because I like to give it more length. But I just moved my lemons. Sorry. So everything I said about my lemon placement just went out the door. I'm putting it back. It was there for a reason. Putting it back. Let's see. Let's see what happens with leaving them in the same place. Or by leaving them in the same place. Okay, like I said, wrap it around. I just don't want the lemons to get lost. That's my whole thing. I don't want the lemons to get lost. The lemons are like the flowers. You don't want your flowers to get lost when you're working on any kind of project. It's a shame to have your lemons and your focal points to get lost. But when you have beautiful greenery, I mean, you have beautiful greenery. So what are you gonna do, right? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use the ones that seem a little bit smaller. And actually, I didn't separate them. Something else that I like to do with everything is to separate. If you know me, let's separate them because they are a little bit different. They're a teeny bit different. This one, some of them have that white little like peps on them. So we don't want them all together in the same, we don't want them right next to each other. It's gonna work out. It's gonna work out. And remember, we're framing our sign. And if I need to sneak it in a little bit more, bend the leaves. Oh, I just pulled that leaf out. Do I want to take that leaf out? No. Let's add it. I just accidentally pulled it out. It's okay. Where'd I pull it from? I just lost it. Oh, I gotta pull it out. Here we go. If that happens and you're afraid for it to happen again, add a little bit of glue and then attach it. I pulled it pretty hard. That's why I pulled out. I'm honestly thinking I'm going to switch it. That's why I keep staring at it, because I really do think I'm going to switch it. But let's keep going because everything else is looking good. So I'm going with the opposites. I am moving along. Remember, we're gonna have to move our bows again. And that is fine. And when you have greenery like this that is so full, you don't have to worry about adding extra things to your wreath because the greenery is gonna take care of it. Remember, this is sticking out completely, then I could come back later on and bend it, change the direction. Doesn't have to be exactly the way you attach it. These are wired florals. It's not like real florals. I bought myself flowers last week and I didn't get them I didn't buy them already in a vase or vase. I had to arrange it myself, and you forget that these are natural. You can't just, you don't have this. So take advantage that you could do that. It makes a difference. It helps you out tremendously. All right, in this case, I put two of the same ones together, which I don't like to do, so I'm going to be pulling one of those out. It's just that we have a lot more of these. Yep, I'm going to be pulling one out. Most people won't notice, but I know. I know that I did that, and that's why I fix it. Because I know. If you did this to sell it, chances are they're not gonna know. They're not gonna go, your customers aren't gonna be looking like, hey, they put two of them that are exactly the same next to each other. They're not gonna notice. That one has the white thingies and so does this one. Oh my god, they're not. But I know. So this guy, I'm gonna pull it back out just to give it the space so these two are not next to each other. For now, because remember I said I might want to switch the lemons, and we may actually have lemon. We might move this lemon over here and this lemon over here just to give it more length. So I'm going to put this one right over here on the side, if that makes sense. Yeah, we're gonna have to switch that lemon, guys. Oh yes, we are. We're switching. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna end up moving this guy. Listen to your gut. My gut was telling me to move it for the length. We want that length at the bottom. There we go. See that? See the difference? How it looks? And length has perceived value as well. So now I'm moving this one over here. And now, because I don't like having them right next to each other, see, lemon, nope. We're gonna skip this guy right here, and the lemon's gonna be right front and center, which is not a bad thing. I was trying to avoid it, but it's not a bad thing. Wrap it. it actually looks pretty cool because you have even more length added to it because you have the greenery and the different greenery together. So now I have a few of them that were a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use that one up top of this, above that one, because I don't want it to hide the lemon. We still want to be able to see the lemon somewhat. Because like I said, these are the products that you are investing money in. You don't want to lose them. You don't want to hide them. You want to show them off. Because then why bother buying them for your wreath? Right? You don't want to do that. Let's not forget our triangle. We have these two guys here. So then we need one more over here to complete our triangle. And it's not perfect. Actually, no, that's fine. We're going to have here and then pull in some of the smaller ones in here. It's just a fun process. It's like a puzzle. It's a puzzle. For me, it's a puzzle. I like puzzles. I like all kinds of puzzles. So this is fun for me. Just trying to figure out, where do I put the next the next stem? Where should it go? Where would it make the most sense? Where would it bring the most value, let's say? So let's count. We still have these 1, 2, 3. So we have 1, right? Like, it all depends how much we want to fill this guy up. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and we have one up here too. So we could do that. Those little ones, we could fill them up at the top here. We can use them there, depending how you want to fill it in. But because we're doing opposites, let's use one right here. If you have the material, use it. Use it. If at some point you wanted to stop because you don't want to overfill it, that's all on you. You're the designer. It's your project. Make it your own. But this is really the part where the design, like I said, it becomes your own. Because maybe you don't like adding so much stuff. So you're going to stop at some point. You're like, okay, that's enough stuff. I'm done. That's fine. Me, I keep going. I like to keep adding things to it. I'm going to add one up here. See that? And we still have our length going on. And we still have one more. And honestly, I'm not sure where I'm going to put it. Right here. Because we needed the 3s, right? We needed the 3. Then these 4 guys that are left over, I mean, we could use them to fill in here. And that's about it. Remember to, once you place it, again, you're going to fix your ribbons. You're going to change the direction of your florals. Meaning, because it has a fern and like a maiden here, you don't want the direction to be covering, let's say, the flower. Not the flower. Oh, I said the flower. The sign. So you have to play with it and move it around to make sure that it is in the direction that you want it to go. You see how full it is already? Now, and this wreath is being made with the white ties. Imagine the yellow ones. How are they going to pop? Even if you cut them, it's still going to pop. It's still going to pop. It's so pretty. So then I still have these 4. These 4. So what am I going to do with them? There, it's just a matter of discretion. It's up to you what you want to do with them. If you want to add them, if you want to get rid of them. But really, we have this space here. We have this gap. So honestly speaking, the way you have 2 choices here. What you could do is you could move this lemon because you have 2 here. See that? You could add this lemon to the inside. So that way you're completing the circle. You have 3, remember? 3. So you have 1, 2, 3 on the inside and 3 on the outside, instead of versus 4 on the outside. Is that what we have outside? Yeah, we have 4 on the outside. So really, this guy should go in here, and then we use one of these fillers on the outside. Make sense? Because we want, if there's 3 items, it should be 3 on the around the wreath. I'm sorry, around the sign. Would it make sense to do the 3 different sizes? Yeah, but I wanted to do the 3 lemons, the 3 larger ones. I'm sorry, the 2 larger ones around it. But again, it's up to you. It's up to you. See that? See the difference? See that? And we could even, hypothetically speaking, if we wanted to use one of the smaller ones here, which are these guys that are down here, we could. We could. It's all up to you if you want to use the smaller ones. Just to keep it going, because the greenery is different also. It's a little bit different. It's not really that much different. But does that make sense? Does that make sense? You see me about to change it, don't you? Actually, I'm too close to it. I need to pull back. Pull it back. See, if we were to move, let's say, this guy down here, it's going to fill it up more in this corner. Understand? If that makes sense? So this small guy, so then that way, you see what I just did, right? It's the design process. It is what it is. Put you back. I like the big guy there. So I shall swap him out. Sorry for taking you out. I like that guy there. Swap him out. Put this guy down here. Even though I don't want 2 of them right next to each other, they're similar. And then this guy here. No, I like the way I had it. So what did we learn? Just use the 3 sizes around the wreath at one time. You don't have to. That's just what I decided to do. That way we keep. And if you really want to go crazy, and I'm not telling you to, you would make sure that the triangles here are also the 3 different sizes. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Because then you'll go insane like I do. Okay. So we still have little spots here. We have a spot over here. Now we throw this one over here. See that? You could even use this guy. Don't forget we have these. If you wanted to add more to it, you could add that one. This guy could be added to your bow. See, there's so many possibilities of what you could do depending on what you want. If you want to add a little bit more length, remember that we had a spot over here underneath the bow. Well, it was actually used, but if I wanted to tie more of this in here, I could do that. Ooh, it actually looks pretty. Let's take this guy out. Do we like that? No, I'll put the other one back. Because I don't want it to be just one single one by itself over there. It's going to be too... You know what? I think we may just have to get rid of it. And go back to what we have. It's okay. It's okay. So in the end, we did not end up using those. We did not use them. And it is okay. I like doing this because honestly, you get to see the design process, and I could very easily edit it out, but I don't want to, because I want you to see exactly the way that I think, and there might be someone else that you follow that thinks differently, and they may have done it a little bit different than the way that I decided to execute it. And even the way that you decided to do it may be different. We all have our own different styles, and that's okay. And we all learn from each other, which is even more awesome. So now that I did all that, now we gotta remember, there's a line. Remember that circle? And even though you want to move things around a little bit to add that dimension and add a little bit more length to it, we're still trying to keep it somewhat within a circle. So what I'm going to do is now I'm just going to see, I have my triangle there. This one is in the back. There is a triangle. Change the direction of the lemons, the way that they're facing. They're not all going to be in the same direction. Some can be in, some can be out. But just make sure that we have that kind of circle going on with it. Now, once we're ready, we fluff up our bow, we move things around. Remember, things are insecure here. This guy is sticking out. Move it so it's not covering the sign. Same thing with all the bows. And that's it. So what do we do now? Now, step back, look at it, make sure you're happy with it. And what you have to do now is take that glue gun and start securing your items. Remember also that you're going to add a hanger to it. So I will be taking a pipe cleaner, preferably yellow, because I like for it to stand out, and add a yellow pipe cleaner here to be able to hang the wreath. Okay, so now how do we attach our items? The way that we attach our items is the way that I like to attach my items. If you're feeling a little bit funky, you could even add this. That'll actually add a little bit more dimension to the sign. See that? Because really in the end there's only one spot. I believe it's only one spot that doesn't have anything. Oh, these two. You could add these two here to finish framing the sign. It actually looks pretty cool. See that? So it's really pretty. Really, really pretty. Just depends on what you want. Let's add it for now. I'm not committing to it, but just so you can see. But you don't want to take away from the bow either. Okay? So this is what I do in order to secure the items. What I do is I make sure that and you may need to use floral picks for this. Wooden floral picks, or these guys right here. They have a little bit of wire on them. And what you're going to do is you're going to use these to add length. And you wrap it around, right? You wrap it around. That's just to hold it temporarily. And then you're going to come back and wrap it with floral tape. And that's just to add a little bit more. Okay? So we're going to wrap it with floral tape. And that's just to give it a little bit more dimension. I'm sorry, a little bit more length. Okay? There are many, many, many tools that you could use to make it happen. To get your ideas to work. See? We just made it a little bit longer. So, where was this guy? Right here. So, like I said before, what I like to do is I make that little eyelet, a little circle. I'm going to push it through. Sometimes you will go through the mesh depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to make it nice and tight. Nice and tight. I did not make it nice and tight. Make sure that you are not undoing your spot for the bows. Okay? Make sure your bows are still in there. So make that little circle. You do not want to see it. Make sure that it's hidden. Wrap it around. I like to nice and squeeze it like I showed you before. And then I come with my glue gun and I hit it with the glue gun. I'm going to add a lot of glue to it. And this is not going to move. It will not move. So like I said, once I'm happy with it, I do that. I add glue above it, below it. And because the points, the needle ties are made out of plastic, they melt onto those points. They end up melting with the glue and they secure it even more. So here is, I'm not going to finish doing it because I want to bore you a little bit more, but you saw how I did that. And we're just going to keep doing that to the entire wreath. I'll have a little close up for you so you see what the finished product looks like. So once we add our hanger, I come back, make sure we fluff everything out. Make sure my bow is nice and pulled, which in this case I lost it. Make sure I secure my bow. Make sure your bow is nicely tied. Lift it up. Make sure it's nice and up. Remember, it is a focal point. And then make a decision on your ribbons. Make sure that, do you want them long? Do you want them short? In this case, I'm going to keep mine long. Maybe you want to cut them, dovetail them, angle them, whatever it is that you do to your ribbons. Sometimes you may not want to have a whole ribbon. Maybe you want to have a faux loop. So you cut it and you tuck it in like this. And that's it. So once that is finished, just make a decision on your ribbons and your bow is done. In this case, like I said, I'm going to keep it long since I like to have long, crazy bows. And that's it, but I'm keeping it like that. Okay, so there is your wreath. There is your lemon wreath made out of mesh with lemons and greenery. Of course, we added a bow, and you still have, remember, you still have some leftover ribbon where you could actually make a smaller bow if you wanted to. Add it to the top over here. That's what I would do. Add it to the top, right? And then you, any extra little space that you have here, move this guy here. See that? And then add a little bow to the top. Just not as many loops. Do them with 2 extra loops. And then you're still going to have a lot of buffalo left over. So that's it. Thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate your time so, so much. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun. And I hope you get to decorate your space with this awesome, awesome new design. Thank you so much. Thank you to Greenery Market for putting this amazing kit together and allowing the opportunity to work with you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great, great, great rest of your day. Take care.